So now it's time to write an example of a body paragraph. I'm writing mine for Naya again. You're writing yours for Selva, but this should give you a general idea of what your body paragraph should look like. So the first thing I need to do is think of what my first survival factor is going to be. You should be able to find this on your organizer on page 6 of that packet that we started in class. My first survival factor for Naya is toughness. So I'm going to write a sentence that basically comes right out and says what the first factor is. So my first sentence is, one factor that helped Naya to survive was her toughness. Now I want to go on and start giving my first example, my first piece of evidence. So I'm going to use quotes for all of my evidence. You don't necessarily have to use quotes, but it's a really good idea if you can. When I'm giving a quote, I want to start by introducing the quote with some context. So my context is, for example, while she was walking, Naya got a thorn stuck in her foot. That's my context. Now I'm going to give my quote about her getting the thorn stuck in her foot. It says, and then picked up another thorn and used it to poke and prod at the first one. Now, after I give my quote, I need to explain how it helped her to survive. So remember that is the big idea I'm trying to come across, is that her toughness helped her survive. So here's my explanation. In this example, her toughness helped her to survive because she endured the pain of the thorn continued her walk to get the water she and her family needed to survive. So I explained how her toughness helped her survive. That's one piece of evidence. Remember, I need 3 pieces of evidence, so here comes the next one. Context. Another example of Naya's toughness is that she spent almost her entire day walking. And now I'll give another quote. As the text says, to the pond and back, nearly a full day of walking altogether. And next, and we should know this pattern by now, next I'm going to explain the quote. I'm going to explain how her toughness helped her to survive. So it says, walking all day was the only way that Naya and her family could survive because they needed the water from the pond. So the toughness she showed by walking such long distances was crucial to her survival. So my explanation, as always, is very clearly stating how that quote shows that toughness helped her to survive. Now I'm going to give my third and final detail. The final example of Naya's toughness was that she was doing all of these things in extreme heat. That's my context. Now my quote. The novel says there was only heat, the sun already baking the air, even though it was long before noon. Before I go into my explanation, I'd like to point out really quickly that you can see that after each quote, I'm putting the page number in parentheses, and it's going outside of the quote after the punctuation. So that page number, like number 1, that last thing that I wrote, is after the period and the quotation mark for the quote. Now I'm going to explain this last quote. I'm going to say again, Naya's toughness was key to her survival because walking through this extreme heat was the only way to get the water she needed. And you'll notice that I'm using transition words, like saying again, Naya's toughness, or saying the final example, another example, for example. I have those transition words throughout this paragraph to make sure it flows together. And now that I have all my details, I'm going to give my last sentence. Concluding sentence that says, by showing her toughness as she continued to complete her daily walk for water through such difficult circumstances, Naya survived. So again, I'm coming back to that idea about how her toughness helped her survive. That's what one body paragraph looks like. You are going to either do 2 or 3 body paragraphs, depending on which length essay you chose. And remember that all of your body paragraphs should all be just as good. So that means you don't do your first body paragraph like this and then let them all get shorter and shorter as you go. All 3 body paragraphs or all 2 body paragraphs should be nice, well-developed paragraphs.